Welcome back. June marks Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, a time dedicated to breaking the stigma surrounding mental health challenges that affect men and boys. While men are often expected to be stoic, strong, and emotionally reserved, the reality is that they face significant mental health struggles, often in silence. Today we're joined by a passionate men's mental health activist who is working to open up honest conversations, promote healing, and push for support systems that truly serve the emotional well-being of men. Joining us for this discussion is none other than Junior Kavikairiua. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Nina.
Thank you so much for being here.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I remember actually when I invited you for today's discussion, I met you for the first time last year to come and talk about this. Yeah.
Yes. This was the month, and this was our intro, obviously, and always a pleasure to be here. Always an honor to be, awarded the opportunity to talk about something that's quite, very close to my heart.
Yeah. So talk to us about what, inspired you to become a mental health activist for men, and specifically focusing on men's mental health now.
Let me share these stats with you quickly,
Mm-hmm.
they speak volumes. 525,000 men a year die by suicide. That is 10,096 men per week, 1,442 men every day, 60 men every hour. That's a man every second worldwide that dies by suicide. Obviously, getting into this was, I've battled depression for the longest time. And in our community, there is no word for depression. In most black cultures or languages, there is no word for depression.
There is, but it's not a very kind one.
Yeah. Very true. But and I was going to say, most of the times you're called moody, or you're called, like we said, those unkind words. But we looked at the stats about 4 years ago. The suicide stats for Namibia came out, and 85% of that number was men. And, women took to social media and started posting, men, what do we need to do? What can we do? So I started looking up social media. I started following up people. I started reading up. And you start seeing the stats. And obviously, having dealt with it for a long time and having started therapy before I started activism, I thought, what? The biggest stigma that we find is that therapy is seen as something for crazy people. And especially amongst men, it's frowned upon. The sad truth is that most men laugh at other men for doing therapy. You are seen as a weak man for pursuing therapy. And so I thought, why not create a platform where you can talk to a regular guy that's not a therapist, and in that way we can guide men towards the necessary professional help.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Why do you think men in particular, Junior, struggle to talk about their mental health?
It's how we're raised. And it's not just black communities, it's international, it's worldwide, where, as you said in the intro, we are taught to be stoic, suppress our emotions. Every time you come up and try and show emotions, again, you're told it's weakness. So men are like computers. You program us. Now, for the longest time, you program us to be stoic, to be silent, to be reserved, to not talk. And when we explode, you hammer us down and say, you know what, you are emotionally unstable, you can't control your emotions, you're angry, toxic masculinity, and all these things pop up. So what do? We're just going to keep quiet about it. And I think that brings me to the place where I said, as men, we can't rely on anyone else to show up for us in the way that we want people to show up for us. We as men need to learn to show up for each other. It is difficult for us because nurture is not our natural inclination. That's nurture is a woman's natural inclination. But we have to start doing that for ourselves. And by creating platforms and safe havens where we can just sit down and have these discussions. Yeah.
What are some of the most harmful, stigmas or myths that surround men's mental health?
Obviously, the biggest one is seeking therapy is weakness. Therapy is for crazy people. Therapy is for mad people, and that's really not the truth. Or therapies for white people. When you
that's
talk,
a very common one as
when you
well.
come from black cultures, and therapies for women. Real men, you just suck it up and you go on for it. And like I said at the top, it's the biggest issue we face is the fact that you've got men stigmatizing men, whereas we should be supporting each other. You think about it, you walk into a group, into a room full of men and ask how many of them do, actively, go to a therapist. and you get laughed out of that room. So, and by all this men. And so how am I, as a man amongst men, going to walk up and say, guys, I do therapy? That's going to put a fear in me of you're going to get laughed at. You're going to get called names, and that's not what we want. So I think the biggest one that we're trying to break down, and like I said, where we're going with trying to create the safe havens, trying to show men that I'm a regular guy. I always use this example when I do my public speaking. It's like, I am 2.02 meters tall. I weigh about 130 kilograms. What about me is weak when I tell you I go to therapy? So you're just trying to create that notion, that break that stigma that we are out here. There are men that go to therapy. There are men, it's healthy. Teach men that it's you just get a different perception on how to deal with life, on how to deal with your emotions. So yeah, I think the biggest one we're trying to break is that it is okay. And then we're obviously going after the boy child. It is difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. So we're going after the boy child and trying to make sure that they understand emotional intelligence, emotional stability. Yes. They understand that there's no weakness in crying. And giving them the right and necessary tools and the support from fellow men that this is okay. I will cry with you if I have to. Yeah. So I think those are the two parts that we're going after, so that make sure that the next generation of men is helped and gets the necessary help to not make the same mistakes our fathers did, the same mistakes that we made, and not repeat the same patterns. Yeah.
Earlier on, you said sort of in the beginning of your journey, you noticed how women were asking, based on the high statistics of men committing suicide within Namibia, like what is it that they can do? How is it that they can help? But then I also heard you said that you've gotten to this realization that men are really their own saviors. And I think all of us need to realize we are the savior that we're waiting for. But I also want to know, if you're a woman, as a romantic partner, as a mother, as a sister, perhaps as a close friend or a female colleague, talk to us about how we can support the men in our lives dealing with mental health issues.
I think the first thing that women need to realize is that you can't deal with male emotions in the same way you deal with female emotions. You can't deal with male trauma the same way you deal with female trauma. Women respond to love. Men respond more to assurance, reassurance, words of affirmation. Most men will have words of affirmation right up very high on their love languages. So I think the one thing that I always say is that it's going to require a lot of patience. Yeah. Because men operate in a space of logic, whereas women operate in a space of emotion. So when you go to him in a space of logic, rather than trying to understand his emotions, because he doesn't understand his emotion. He's trying to figure it out. And my therapist said to me, and I'll never forget this, she said, "It's a problem with most men and you intellectuals is you try and think through your emotions. You're supposed to feel through them." Right. So, and because you understand the emotional side of things, that's where you come in to try and give him that help to understand the emotions and to try and make sure that, this is the healthy way to express those emotions. And I think the biggest one is that we struggle with, and especially as far as women are concerned, is don't ever use what a man has communicated to you in a moment of vulnerability against him, because that shuts him down.
Ammunition.
Yeah. That we all know it happens quite a lot, that what we have in this conversation can be used in a fight elsewhere, or in an argument elsewhere, a disagreement elsewhere. So don't use his vulnerabilities against him, because you lose him for good. Yeah, you use our vulnerabilities against us, you've lost us for good.
Junior, just for the sake of time, I know that you're very active and have a lot of activities usually lined up in terms of helping men and creating the safe space. So what do you have planned for June, just briefly? Yeah,
so we are in Khobabas this weekend. We've got what we call the Brotherhood, Boys to Men seminar. Again, like I said, we're tackling the boys. We want to make sure they get the vast advice. We're tackling things like alcohol abuse, mental health and emotional stability, relationships with parents, and then relationships with women. So we're targeting a group from 16 to 24-year-olds. That's happening in Khobabas at Ben van der Walt on Saturday as from 9 to 4. And then we have, with K Goodness, we have our monthly Brotherhood Bonfire session. That happens every month, either we try and do it every third Friday unless something comes up. So that's happening on the 20th of June on Friday. That's in Windhoek. But those are to the Brotherhood Bonfire we do on a monthly basis, because we feel that needs to happen
consistently.
Consistently and as much as possible. And then it's basically men around a fire. having a few drinks, and just having a topic of discussion for the evening that we talk about. So
Beautiful.
yeah, two different areas, and the bonfire is basically for people that are a bit older, and with a Boys to Men seminar in Gobabas, which will have another one that's happening in Windhoek later in the year as well. So
Awesome.
we started in Twirongo, we did Gobabas, and now we'll finish off in Windhoek. So
beautiful.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here this evening. It's always lovely speaking to you. Thank you
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Nina, for putting us out there, putting the sharing the exposure and sharing platforms so that we can get the message out there. So
You're
thank
welcome.
you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, when we come back after this brief break, we talk some more. Just stay with us.